What is up guys, Andy Forrest Steam Runner here. Welcome back to another video, and today I'm giving you guys my first impressions of the Asics Magic Speed 2. So that's 2 runs now done in the Magic Speed 2 to bring you guys my first impressions. A nice 75-minute moderate run and a decent workout, kickstarting week 1 of my marathon training series. Excited to get my hands on this one finally, and got a cracking discount which I will share with you later. But before that, we're going to be going through the technical overview before I give you my thoughts on this shoe. So if you're excited for today's video guys, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and let's dive in to the tech. So just before we kickstart, I do apologise about the audio. I know it's bouncing around a little bit of an empty room in here, but it will be sorted very soon. So let's dive into the tech now straight away by saying I went true to size in this shoe, UK size 13, and fits perfectly for me. It's roughly, well, it is a 7mm heel to toe drop. No exact figures have been given, but a lot of people are measuring 37 in the heel and 30 in the forefoot, which is exactly what I'm getting as well. And in my UK size 13, it's coming in at 308 grams or 10.8 ounces. And as always, we'll work our way from the back of the shoe, talk about the ankle collar, the tongue, the lacing, the upper, the midsole, and then move our attention to the outsole. Let's start back here with a little bit of something, a little bit of spring back here, but nothing crazy. It's certainly not a rigid heel counter that you might find in a daily trainer, something giving you a little bit more support. This is a speedy shoe, so it's going to be a bit of structure here, a bit of spring back, but you don't want anything crazy. Obviously, they're trying to save weight and produce a really lightweight training partner to what is the Sky and the Edge, and they do it well. You can see there's quite a pronounced curve here. I don't know if it would affect anyone that normally suffers with Achilles issues. It doesn't for me. Just a question I'm throwing out there if any of you have had any, but for me it was absolutely fine. Ankle collar groove cut nicely, sits lovely under the ankle bone, no worries there at all, and a paper thin tongue here, which is literally that length. So it's on the shorter side, but it's enough to come up and just cover the top of the laces onto the top of the ankle. There is a tiny bit of something, I'm not even going to call it padding, just a little bit of extra material as you move down over the top of the foot, but then to be honest with you, I didn't notice any extra pressure on the top of the foot, so it clearly did its job. You can see here that there is the extra eyelet there if you want to do the runner's knot, but I'm going to be honest with you, the laces are quite short in this shoe, so certainly as it's laced as it is, you couldn't use that runner's knot now. You'd have to either relace it or put new laces in. But that's there if you need to. When it comes to the lacing actually itself, relatively decent standard lacing system. I'd say the laces feel okay. They didn't come completely loose, but I certainly did lose some of that tension as I was running through the runs. Nothing major, but the shoe did feel looser on foot by the time I got to the end. Just a point to note, in terms of the way it's laced and everything, absolutely fine, but I'm wondering if better laces would be required there. Moving on to the engineered mesh upper, it is wonderful and breathable, and I love it. One of the best parts about this shoe, and a relatively wide toe box for me, for someone that has a wider foot. My feet were not cramped in there at all. It felt absolutely fantastic, and it is very see-through and very, very breathable. Water got in on a couple of the runs that I was doing, and it didn't hang around. It didn't feel like it weighted the shoe down at all. It was brilliant. So massive thumbs up for the upper in that respect. Flight Foam Blast Plus midsole, I was expecting a little bit more from this. I'm going to go into that shortly, but overall a really good midsole. I mean, the whole Flight Foam Blast is just brilliant for Asics. It's been great for the last 2 or 3 years since they've started implementing it. It's great to see it in this shoe, considering such a good upgrade from version 1, but we will come to that shortly because it is definitely on the firmer side. There's a couple of reasons for that. I think that's combined with the TPU and carbon plate full length that is in this shoe. It feels very, very pronounced in this thing. When you talk about carbon plated shoes, sometimes you can feel the plate a little bit more than in other shoes, and that really can depend on where the plate is positioned. And I do feel the shoe, I do feel the plate in this shoe quite a lot. It does feel very rigid, and I think that contributes to maybe a slightly firmer feel underfoot. Then we move on to the outsole. And we've got Asics grip rubber outsole, very similar pattern to what you see in the racing shoes. This grip is tacky. This is absolutely fantastic. Again, another brilliant addition here to the shoe. I ran in wet conditions on both of the runs, or the roads were at least wet and a little bit icy. And I have to say, I just felt so confident in this shoe. This is one of the best grips I've tried, especially on a lighter weight trainer. And that is it for the tech. So here we go then, first impressions of the Magic Speed 2. So let's start off by saying I purchased this shoe with my own money. Nobody sent this to me, and I managed to get it on a real bargain for £90. So this shoe was only released, what was it, September the 1st, the same day as the Nova Blast. And I was desperate to get the Nova Blast and this at the time. I remember thinking at the time, I really, really want to try this shoe. It looks great. And considering I can't use Asics Super shoes because they only go up to a UK size 12, I think this is the closest I'm going to get to trying that sort of profile of a shoe and seeing what, I guess getting a bit of a teaser as to what it could be if I was to be able to try their racing shoes. And I've got to say, it delivered in abundance. Not to say there's no downsides to this shoe, because there are, but overall it's come in and done the job that I wanted it to. And what job did I want it to do? Well, I wanted it to come in and soak up a lot of marathon training miles. I've done a couple of comparison videos recently talking about the Zoomfly 5, the Nova Blast 3, the Speed 3, and I envisaged this thing being as close to the Speed 3 as anything, and I wasn't wrong. It really does cover the same areas as the Speed 3. There's a comparison to be done there because I think they're two very similar shoes in terms of, for me, how I would use them, but two very different feeling shoes. I'll start with a couple of negatives because I've just got to say it. As I mentioned earlier, the lacing was a little bit disappointed. The foot did feel a little bit looser when I finished the runs. I think what was the first one, 11 miles, the steady run. And when I finished my workout, with the warm-up and cool-down, it was over 12 miles. So I put some pretty hefty miles in them for the first two runs. And I've got to say, it still felt relatively secure, but it had definitely come looser. I think these laces are just a bit naff, if I'm honest with you. They feel a little bit cheap, which is a shame. The back part of the shoe as well, I wasn't able to get quite the locked-in feeling that I wanted to, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that. If you look at the kind of the way the material is, it kind of starts here and it kind of puffs out and goes in, just like this here. This kind of semicircular profile goes around the edges of the shoe. And so when I slot my foot in, it doesn't kind of like compress and hug into the heel and feel like you're secured in nicely. Don't get me wrong, there's no heel slippage. I don't feel like it is going to heel, but I do feel like my heel can move a couple of millimeters to the left and the right. So that took a little bit of getting used to, but halfway through the first run, that went. It reminded me of it when I started my second run in it, and again, it went halfway through. So it's not something for me to worry about massively, but I'm just putting it out there. If you like a really, really, really secure fit, the Speed is a better option for that than this thing. Other than that, I've got to say, bar that kind of overall, I don't want to say sloppy fit because it's not sloppy, but there's a little bit of work to be done there in future versions. Overall, the ride is as I expected, albeit slightly firmer. So this is quite a noisy shoe. It reminds me of the Vaporfly. I've got that Vaporfly slap that a lot of people say. This is quite similar. It's quite noisy when you're running. It does slap. And I don't know where the carbon plate is. I'd love to see if it's cut in this, follow this groove here. I don't know if it goes all the way down here. I think it does. So the plate's quite low to the floor, and it does give you a lot of rigidity. In terms of stability, I find it to be really, really good. Where I struggled a little bit was when I was having to hop up and down off pavement to road when there were cars coming and stuff. I felt like I might roll my ankle very slightly. You know what it's like if you've ever taken a plated shoe out on the trails or on some gravelly areas or whatever, and you just land and your foot just rocks slightly and you're like, ooh, that's kind of like in this shoe, it feels a bit more pronounced because the plate feels so rigid. And I think what that does is that nullifies the foam a little bit, because the foam definitely feels really nice and squishy. Probably not as squishy as the racing shoes. I'm sure a lot of you can vouch for that, but it does feel a little bit firmer. Overall though, it's exactly what I wanted. And when I did the moderate run, it was an absolute dream, smooth as butter. Brilliant shoe, just forgot it was on foot after a while and just cruised. When it came to the workout, You'll see how the workout went if you tune into the marathon training series this weekend. It didn't go to plan, more so because of fatigue than anything, but I couldn't fault the shoe in the slightest. It was absolutely brilliant, and it got up to those top end paces with ease. Something that I would say the speed, with the edge of the speed being taken off, because I think the stability's been improved, the width of the speed, it's just become a bit more of a cruiser. This has slotted into its place. This feels like it has that edge. This feels a bit rogue. It feels a bit rough and ready. I've mentioned the kind of looseness in the fit of the shoe. It kind of feels like you're trying to tame a wild horse a little bit, but when you tame it, it feels really, really good. And I got to be honest with you, I loved it. I'm not going to lie, I got that wow factor when I put my foot in, and then I got really angry with Asics for not producing the super shoes in my size, because I thought, damn, if this is what the training partner feels like, I wish I could try the racing partner. So overall, it's been a really positive start, albeit a couple of, not issues, a couple of things, points to note if you're considering it and you're considering grabbing it on discount. Just a couple of things there to note, but overall this is going to get a lot of marathon training miles in it. This is really exciting for me, and I'm absolutely delighted that I finally managed to get it into my training rotation. I would love to hear from you if you've tried these before. Did you get them on launch? What are your thoughts? Are you going to grab them on discount now? Let me know what you think of the Magic Speed 2. I'd love to hear what that is down in the comments below. That's it from me today though, guys. First impressions, raw and ready, a long run later this week in them. Excited to share those thoughts as well with you next week on the channel. That's it for today, guys. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Until then.